I weep for these things. My eyes flow with tears. Far from me is any comforter who might revive my spirit. Let us share together. We sit forlornly on the ground, lamenting, yet we do not mourn alone. God clothes the skies with darkness and covers them with sack. God clouds the light of sun and moon and dims the twinkling stars. God rends purple robes and walks barefoot, sits lone and silent as God weeps and asks again, "Where are you?" We take this moment together on Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av, to ask ourselves, what is grief? Can we sit with it? What is sadness? And can we again sit with it and not fight it? Can we embrace grief? Can we embrace sadness? We take a moment to allow ourselves to simply be here in this moment together before we move on. On this Tisha B'Av, we traditionally read Megillat Eicha, or the Book of Lamentations, I will chant the first 3 verses of Megillat Eicha on the second page of your packet. And the word Eicha itself, here it says alas, but it can also mean how. It is an expression of grief. And the first 4 chapters of the Book of Lamentations follow a similar pattern. If you notice, verse 1 starts with an aleph, verse 2 starts with bet, verse 3 starts with gimel, and this goes all the way through the aleph bet. This is not just a poetic device. This shows the completeness of the grief that we are to sit in on Tisha B'Av. It envelops the entire aleph bet from aleph to tav. I will chant the first 3 verses, and please notice the minor falling key of the trope of the chanting, and then I will invite you to read along in English. Eicha yashava vadad ha'ir rabati am hayata karamana rabati vagoyim sarati bamdinot hayta lamas bachut ivche balayla v'dimata alecheya en la menachem mikol ohaveha koreha bagduva hayula loivim galata Yehuda meoni umerov avoda hi yashva vagoyim lo matza manoach kol odfeha hisiguha ben hametzarim. Let us share together. Alas, lonely sits the city, once great with people. She that was great among nations is become like a widow. The princess among states is become a thrall. Bitterly she weeps in the night, her cheek wet with tears. There is none to comfort her of all her friends. All her allies have betrayed her. They have become her foes. Judah has gone into exile because of misery and harsh oppression. When she settled among the nations, she found no rest. All her pursuers overtook her in the narrow places. The first 3 verses compare the state of our being to that of a widow, to that of one weeping, and to that of one in exile. We continue together. For Tisha B'Av, our cherished litany of loss by Menachem Creditor. You, Jerusalem, God, your name burns my mouth. Golden watchtowers, heart-pulsing sacred stones, center of the universe, lion's share of all the beauty that could be. Millions clamor for your love. You, O Jerusalem, eternal city, why do you sit alone? I miss you so very much. I miss you in your absence, long for you because you are not here, because I am not there with you. That is about me, not about you. I mourn for myself when I mourn for you. Just now, I walked your streets, wept at your renewed splendor and excessive spenders, cried over the ruins and the ruined people who adorn you. Stones without end absorb us all, joyful shouts and fallen souls, estranged brothers and sisters, inches away from each other's hearts. Hidden are the divine ledgers of sin, but lists upon lists of right and wrong are still kept. Those ancient stones have witnessed it all. Smothered sigh and fierce anger, ignited faith and craven hunger, brokenness, artistry, ecstasy, and light, build, burn, burned, dance, eat, eaten, eaten. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you poor aching city, you spread your worn hands for help, but there are no comforters who truly listen. You sitting alone under all of us is all of us sitting alone under and on top of each other. 2 temples, 9 days, 3 weeks, 67, 2,000, 6 million, all numbers, our cherished litany of loss. You call to all your lovers, but we, one of your beloved lovers, hear only our own name. But today's strange gift, longing for what is already restored. Might we finally remember to cease pretending we own your infinite beauty, that your ruin is our own making. Haven't we mourned enough to learn that we belong to you, not the other way round? Turn us that we might return, for we have forgotten Jerusalem. You burn me. We continue on the following page with the piece Tourists by Yehuda Amichai. Visits of condolence is all we get from them. They squat at the Holocaust Memorial. They put on grave faces at the Wailing Wall, and they laugh behind heavy curtains in their hotels. They have their pictures taken together with our famous dead at Rachel's tomb and Herzl's tomb and on Ammunition Hill. They weep over our sweet boys and lust after our tough girls and hang up their underwear to dry quickly in cool, blue bathrooms. Once I sat on the steps by a gate at David's Tower. I placed my 2 heavy baskets at my side. A group of tourists was standing around their guide, and I became their target marker. You see that man with the baskets? Just right of his head, there's an arch from the Roman period. Just right of his head. But he's moving. I said to myself, redemption will only come if their guide tells them, you see that arch from the Roman period? It's not important, but next to it, left and down a bit, there sits a man who's bought fruit and vegetables for his family. We continue a piece by Dan Pagis, written in pencil in the sealed boxcar. Here in this transport, I, Eve, am with my son Abel. If you see my elder son, Cain, son of man, tell him I am. We continue together. We've heard some of the words of Lamentations and read some of the poetry. But what is this day? We'll get into a discussion a bit later. So according to the Mishnah, one of our classical Jewish texts, Ta'anit, Tractate Ta'anit, particularly chapter 4, verse 6, on Tisha B'Av, which is this day, the 9th day of this month, we mourn these 5 main tragedies that befell the Jewish people. The first was on this day, the sin of the spies, the Meraglim from the Torah, occurred. The spies returned from scouting out the land of Israel with a negative report, which resulted in them wandering in the desert for 40 years instead of going straight into the land. This occurs in Torah, in Parsha Shalach Lecha. It's also said on this day, the destruction of the first temple occurred. This was in 586 BCE by the Babylonians, led by Nebuchadnezzar, and this was followed by the Babylonian exile, which is in current Iraq. It's also thought that perhaps the Book of Lamentations was written around the time of the Babylonian exile. Some say by the prophet Jeremiah, others say a group of people. Third, on this day, the destruction of the second temple occurred, this time in 70 CE by the Romans, led by Emperor Titus. This was also followed by exile, and some would say that exile remains to this very day. Fourth, on this day, the Bar Kokhba revolt took place and it was crushed. The last Jewish stronghold, Beitar, was destroyed, and this resulted in the killing of thousands of Jews. Fifth, according to our Mishnah, on this day, the Temple Mount was plowed over and rebuilt as a pagan city by the Romans, led by General Turnus Rufus. In addition to these 5 traditional tragedies, Tisha B'Av has become a day for mourning for other Jewish tragedies that have occurred throughout history, many of which happened on this date or have been attributed to this date, such as the ending of the Spanish Inquisition and the Jewish expulsion from Spain in 1492, the declaration of the First Crusade in 1095, and the outbreak of World War I in 1914. It is also said that Heinrich Himmler approved that horrific final solution on the 9th of Av, 1941, and also that the mass deportation of Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto to Treblinka concentration camp occurred on Tisha B'Av, 1942. We will return together to the themes of this day in a few moments. But on Tisha B'Av, we traditionally read kinot, which are their sad liturgical poems. And this kina is of the Ashkenazic tradition. It was written in the 1600s, and it begins on the following page. I invite you to read along if you'd like. You can drop out as you wish, jump in where you see fit, or simply listen to this kina. We will do it in English so we can all take part. Remember, Lord, what has occurred to us. Alas, look and see our disgrace. Alas, what has occurred to us. Our property has been handed over to strangers. Alas, our homes to foreigners. Alas, what has occurred to us. We have become orphans without a father. Alas, our mothers mourn in the month of Av. Alas, what has occurred to us. We had to purchase water to drink. Alas, because we abused the water libation. Alas, what has occurred to us. We had yokes put on our necks. Alas, because we hatefully persecuted others. Alas, what has occurred to us. To the Egyptians we stretched out our hand. Alas, and the Assyrians trapped us like a hunter. Alas, what has occurred to us. Our ancestors have sinned and are no more. Alas, and we suffer for their sins. Alas, what has occurred to us. Slaves rule over us. Alas, because we did not release our slaves. Alas, what has occurred to us. We risk our lives to get our bread. Alas, because we closed our hands to the needy. Alas, what has occurred to us. Our skin has shriveled as from the heat of an oven. Alas, because they exchanged their honor for disgrace. Alas, what has occurred to us. They tortured the women of Zion. Alas, because we violated our friends' wives. Alas, what has occurred to us. Princes were hung by their hands. Alas, because they were violent and robbed the poor. Alas, what has occurred to us. Our young men were forced to carry millstone. Alas, because they were found in the houses of harlots. Alas, what has occurred to us. The elders ceased to be at the city gates. Alas, because they perverted the judgments against the orphan and widow. Alas, what has occurred to us. The joy in our heart has ceased. Alas, because we annulled our pilgrimages to the temple. Alas, what has occurred to us. The crown has fallen from our head. Alas, because our holy temple has burnt down. Alas, what has occurred to us. It is due to this that we became faint-hearted. Alas, because the honor of our beloved house has been removed. Alas, what has occurred to us. For Mount Zion has become desolate. Alas, because we have placed an abomination on it. Alas, what has occurred to us. For you, Lord, shall reign forever, for your throne endures from generation to generation. Why have you forgotten us forever and forsaken us for so long? Return us to you, Lord, and we will return. Renew our days as of old. For if you utterly despised us with an exceedingly furious anger against us, return us to you, Lord, and we will return. Renew our days as of old. From Lamentations, or Eicha, chapter 5, verse 21. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai elecha, Venashuva, Venashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yamenu Kekedem, Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai elecha, Venashuva, Venashuva, Yameinu Kekedem. Turn us back, O Lord, to you, and we will turn, renew our days as before. So, thank you all for being here to experience these moments together, and I hope you glean some meaning from the poetry of the evening as we move from the beginning of Tisha B'Av tonight into the day tomorrow. As Reformed Jews here tonight, it's an unusual one, for sure. It's an unusual night. We gather together to technically mourn something that none of us has ever actually seen before: the destruction of the temples nearly 2,000 years ago. Yet, Judaism, our tradition, has insisted that every generation return to this day, that we remember this day, we observe this day. Why? And perhaps Tisha B'Av isn't asking us simply to remember two buildings, two temples. Maybe it's asking us to remember what happens, how it feels when something sacred is lost, when something holy is destroyed. And also, how do we rebuild when we feel as if something sacred is lost? So my first question, and I want to open it up for discussion, so we sort of ground ourselves together again. And there are no wrong answers or outlandish answers to these questions. What do you think we are really mourning on Tisha B'Av? Are we mourning a building, a way of life, a sense of God's closeness, every experience of deep loss? What are we really mourning? Any thoughts? Does that evoke anything? It's a big question. And perhaps framed differently, you chose to come here tonight. Why? Any thoughts? Barbara.
Well, the usual answer is that we're mourning the destruction of the temple. But is it really the temple or a place where we gather and pray together? I feel that is more important than the building itself, to be together.
Thank you. Rabbi Fisher.
Actually, I don't mourn the buildings themselves. In fact, if there's an effort to rebuild the temple, a third temple, I have no interest in it, and I think it's most Jews don't have any interest in it. But we really mourn the destruction of the city and the suffering of the people who were exiled then, and who faced the need to totally revamp Jewish life from a temple-centered worship to a book-centered Jewish life. And that was a formidable challenge, which obviously we accomplished. And we still need to evolve further. But there's a lot of suffering along the way.
Thank you. Any thoughts? Yeah, Rabbi Fisher brought it up. The rabbis, the Jewish people could have ended Judaism when the temple fell. Instead, we transformed it. Sacrifices turned into tefillah, into prayer. Priests, Kohanim, gave way to rabbis. And the temple sort of gave way to communities and homes. So, any other thoughts of why is it still important to recognize this day? Dean.
At different times it means different things. This day, this evening, and then the day that follows it. There are a lot of times where, at least in my lifetime, we've had very, very happy, continuous periods for Judaism, and you have to force yourself to recall that it's not always been a happy journey, and there've been down moments. Right now, it's very easy to see it and feel it because we're in one of those moments with anti-Semitism and Israel's struggles right now. But so it takes on a different meaning. But historically, this moment, this day, has this observance has meant that to me, that it's forcing us to recall that it's a long, sometimes painful journey for Judaism.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. Great points. Mark, thank you.
Yeah, I think everything that Rabbi and Dean just said touches on everything of how my perspective of it is, and it kind of created like the birth of modern Judaism, of how we worship today. But I think it's also the point of the remembrance is there's a saying, those who don't learn from their history are doomed to repeat it. I think it's important to remember, obviously, because these things did happen, and if you forget about it, it could happen again. So we have to honor, the memory of those people that were lost during this time, but also be vigilant and remember that, at any point, it could become another, fall of the temple, so to speak. So that's why I think it's kind of a solemn day.
Thank you. Okay, so any other thoughts that this evokes? I wanted to pivot a little bit to the idea of rebuilding. And it was mentioned by Rabbi that, many people don't have any interest in seeing a third temple, literally. But if Tisha B'Av is about the longing to rebuild, what in our own lives, in our own congregation, our own society, our own world is worth rebuilding today? Some ideas: is there trust, community, Jewish identity, relationships? What do we long to rebuild today? A little bit more of an open question.
I feel like today the world needs a little more human connection and a little less instant gratification. I feel like if people put their phones down and looked at people in the eye and cared about your neighbor and, checked in on one another, that the world would definitely be a better place. I feel like we lost that human caring for each other, honestly.
That's a great point. Yeah, maybe the temple represents not something that we long to go back to, the practices of the korbanot, the sacrifices, but a place of gathering face to face, a place of community, a non-digital community. Can you really have a digital community? That's a question maybe for a different time, but that's a great point. Any thoughts about that, about rebuilding? We all went through, it seems perhaps like yesterday or so long ago, we went through COVID together. And we got to see what it was like when we were out of face-to-face community, when contact was limited or there was none at all. So how do we view that now in 2026 and 5786? Any thoughts, or just something to consider, I suppose? Another question I have here that might bring something up. What actually destroys a community? The rabbis, when speaking of the temples, they talked about the first temple being destroyed by transgression, by avodah zarah, by idol worship. And the second temple was destroyed because of sinat chinam, because of baseless hatred. What threatens communities today? What threatens to tear apart communities today? Have we moved on from idol worship and baseless hatred, or are they still the threats? And were they ever?
Well, that would be politics today. In my opinion, even amongst Jews, I think the most deadly thing is the infighting between Jews and not in agreement, whether it be with Israel and Palestine, and or whether you support Trump or this or that, and kind of like she was saying before, it's all about individualism now instead of us as a people. It's so focused on me and how I feel, and instead of we as a community, we as a people, right? Because how did these things happen the first time? Because there had to have been some type of defect or flaw somewhere in the community for it to happen, in my opinion, right? They don't just fall apart on their own unless it was just a situation of the other guys being severely militaristically more, better than us or whatever. But I think part of it, the way the house falls, so to speak, is it starts from within. When there's disruption from within, when Jews can't get along, that's where I think the issue is. So I think today it's really the politics. It's, who voted for who, the stance on this and that, and it's just like, well, let's focus on what makes us together, which is God and our traditions and, the Torah. So.
Interesting. I had a thought, but I'm going to let Hillary take this one.
I feel like I could give the same exact answer as I did before for what makes community fall apart. But I honestly think that the main thing is a lack of gratitude that makes community fall apart, because when you can't see the bigger picture and have a perspective for that there is something bigger than you are, and just being here and breathing and is something to be grateful for, and you focus on, being seen and me and what do I deserve and inequities, and that puts divide in community. But if I feel like gratitude is the center of it, of keeping a community together.
Wow, thank you. And I might, not to pick on Mark, but I might say that Jews have always disagreed, right? We've always had these multiple perspectives, yet we've endured. So has some of the quote-unquote infighting caused us to endure, while other civilizations and other peoples have come and gone, the people of Israel have remained. So I wonder what that is, right? The difference of opinion, the ability to disagree, to have machlochet l'shem shamayim, to have disagreements for the greater good. Has that kept us? I would ask. One more question, I suppose, and if anything comes up for anybody, a thought, remark. We know the temple wasn't perfect, that neither temple was perfect. The times weren't perfect, the people weren't perfect. Can something be holy without being perfect? Synagogues aren't perfect, families aren't perfect, Israel is not. What makes something holy despite its imperfections? That was my sort of last question. What makes something holy despite its imperfections? Sure.
What about the Kavanah? What's the intention behind it? If, you're doing something and it's, not for, I guess, a moral reason or, a reason for goodness, and, then I think that that's a problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just to take one step back about what you were saying of how we endure, even though we do have disagreements, I think the difference is in my 54 years of life, it feels like up until now, disagreements and what Mark said, like infighting, was respectful. Like, I can disagree with anyone and still have respect for you, and we could talk to each other and see our perspective and where we're coming from. But in today's day and age, you talk at people and you don't listen, which is part of communication. You just want to hear yourself talk. So that puts a divide. You lack that ability.
That's a great point. We say Shema, of course, right? Listen, Israel. And someone brought this up to me pretty recently, that most of the time it's very difficult to listen. We're usually waiting, maybe unless you're a great active listener, we're usually waiting for another person to finish so we can say what we already have to say, and then people end up talking at each other. So what does it mean to truly Shema Yisrael, to listen? Maybe that's the lesson that comes out of tonight. It's a great point. And I had just wrote down a question for this evening. What blessings emerged historically from adaptation? We literally had the move from temple Judaism to rabbinic Judaism. And what blessings in our own lives, in our own world, emerge from change, from adaptation? So Tisha B'Av, it ends not with despair, but it ends with hope. And then the Shabbat following, on Friday night, begins Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of consolation. So Jewish tradition teaches us that the seed of redemption is born on this day. It's actually said that Mashiach, the Jewish Messiah, will be born on this day, on Tisha B'Av. So our ancestors lost the temple, but they refused to lose Judaism. They rebuilt, not by replacing the past, but by carrying its holiness forward into a new future. So maybe that's our calling, on top of Shema, to listen, to honor what has been lost, while asking ourselves, what is ours to rebuild? Thank you. we continue with Ani Ma'amin. I believe with complete faith in the coming of Mashiach. Even though they may delay, nevertheless, I yearn every day for their coming. Ani Ma'amin, and the song that follows, like this day, begin with sorrow, but end with hope. Ani Ma'amin, Ani Ma'amin, Ani Ma'amin, Be'emunah shelema, Beviat HaMashiach, Beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin, Beviat HaMashiach, Beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shelema, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shelema, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin, ve'af al pi sheitmamea, im kol ze ani ma'amin, ve'af al pi sheitmamea, im kol ze ani ma'amin. We turn the page together and we read the greatest tragedy of all in human terms. The Holocaust was followed a mere 3 years later by what Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory refers to as the single greatest collective affirmation of life in 2,000 years, the rebirth of the state of Israel. So we, as a group together, are invited to sing Hatikva. We end always with hope, even in times of sadness and times of grief. If you're willing and you're able and you'd like to, I do invite you to rise as we lift our voices together and conclude our time tonight with Hatikva, with the hope. Kol od balev penima, nefesh Yehudi homiya, ulfate mizrach kadima, ayin letzion tzofia. תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. As long as in the heart within the Jewish soul yearns, and toward the eastern edges onward, an eye gazes toward Zion, our hope is not yet lost, the hope that is 2,000 years old, to be a free nation in our land, the land of Zion, Jerusalem. Amen.